Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the health and wellness phase. Again, don't forget, we're in that health and wellness phase. So to get things started, I want you to think about this because we have a great activity lined up for you. Adolescents, and that's that age between 10 and 19, and young adults make up 21% of the U.S. population. Again, adolescents and young adults make up 21% of the U.S. population. The patterns established during these developmental periods determine a young person's health status and risk for developing chronic diseases in adulthood. So did you hear that? It's this middle school time and those patterns that our kids are adopting that really establish their health status and or their risk for developing chronic diseases. So don't forget about this. So that's why this phase is so important. We want to influence them now. So again, with that said, all of today's activities are focused on preventable diseases, and that's what we're going to talk about in today's activity. Diseases that, for the most part, with the right kind of diet, exercise, and lifestyle change, can be prevented. Yes, they can be prevented. Here's some quick statistics for you. As of 2010, 25.8 million Americans will have diabetes, had diabetes. 1 in 3 Americans suffer from high blood pressure, and if you don't know this, high blood pressure puts you at risk for heart disease and stroke. 33% of adults have bad cholesterol. I'm one of those. Being overweight or obese are risk factors for lots of chronic diseases such as heart failure, stroke, and hypertension. And then, of course, you guys probably all know this because the American Heart Association does such a great job of promoting, how we can prevent heart disease, and that is that heart disease is the leading cause of death in the United States. All bad stuff, right? But let's talk about how we can have a positive influence on our kids. So if we think back about that developmental period of our lives, unhealthy habits start this early and can lead to a lifetime of pain and suffering, and not to mention a financial burden, the rising health costs, etc. So we want to go through our activities today and encourage our youth to start adopting or developing now, right in this moment today, healthy habits and practices. Because when our kids are happy and healthy, they're more optimistic, better equipped to deal with challenges, they learn in the classroom, etc. And and don't underestimate our young people. They're great advocates. So, kids with knowledge can be great advocates and have a tremendous influence on their family, their friends, their school, and future generations to come. So again, more and more research, and you guys are hearing it all the time, many of the chronic diseases I mentioned earlier are Preventable. What does that spell? Preventable. So let's get out there and reduce the burden of chronic diseases and save some lives. All right, so let's start with an ounce of prevention. An ounce of prevention is our name of our activity today, and we have a question of the day. Would you rather live for 10 years in excellent health? That's 10 years in excellent health, or 30 years in average health. All right, 10 years in excellent health or 30 years in average health. My answer is 10 years in excellent health. I could probably get a lot done if I'm really super healthy in 10 years. Than kind of unhealthy in 30 years, all right? Now, we have kind of a two-parter energizer, and the first part is you're going to start with reading out. We have a little text there for you that today's session will be focused on making you all aware of 4 diseases or illnesses that are completely preventable. Why, you ask? Since we are exploring concepts of what it means to be healthy, we thought, what a good time to start talking about how we can prevent diseases. Diseases such as heart disease, diabetes, cholesterol, and high blood pressure. So now you're going to survey the students. So you're going to start off by saying, raise your hand if you've heard or known someone with heart disease. Raise your hand or know someone who's had diabetes, suffers from high cholesterol, high blood pressure, etc. Hands down. Raise your hand if you know you could prevent these diseases, and see how many people know how they can prevent these diseases, right? So we're going to try to give them some information, some knowledge, so hopefully that they can learn how to prevent these diseases. Next, you're going to post up, we have some diagrams for you, a diagram of heart disease, what diabetes looks like, cholesterol, etc. And you'll need 2 mentors, so maybe one at a time. You can have a mentor hold one up and post it, and then another mentor can read. And then, as you're talking about heart disease, someone will give an explanation. We have some descriptors for you. Heart disease. Heart disease is the center of the cardiovascular. The heart is the center of the cardiovascular system. Through the body's blood vessels, the heart pumps blood into all the cells in the body. The blood carries oxygen, etc., etc. So you'll go through each diagram. You'll give them a little background on, these different things like heart disease, diabetes, cholesterol, high blood pressure. So you're giving them a little information. So we're starting to get them warmed up so that they can learn a little bit about what we're talking about today. Next, then you're going to move into a fun activity. So now that we've talked about what heart disease is, what diabetes is, cholesterol, we're going to test their knowledge. So now's the test. So make sure you're thoroughly going over the diseases and the diagrams and allowing them to look at it if they want to pass it out and look at them and generate some great conversation. I'm sure a lot of our kids, be prepared, are probably going to share that someone in their family suffers probably more like diabetes or high blood pressure, or maybe even heart disease. But be prepared, that conversation is going to come about, and we want to change it and make it a positive conversation and say, hey, well, how can we prevent you from suffering from one of those illnesses, all right? So make sure you generate good, healthy conversation. Now you're going to move into the fun game. The fun game's pretty simple. You're going to give your students, you're going to break them up into 2 groups. Each group's going to get a stack, 2 stacks of paper. One's going to be images, one is words or whatnot. And then you're going to ask them to face it down. So you got 2 groups. Each group will have their stack face down. When you say go, the whole point of the game is to match. And I did a larger version here for you. And pretty much they need to match a food that is likely to contribute to one of the preventable diseases we talked about. So for example, there's cholesterol, heart disease, diabetes, and high blood pressure. So cholesterol would go with a juicy bacon layered and cheese layered hamburger. We've got heart disease with a juicy piece of steak. Am I making you hungry? But remember, it's bad for you. Diabetes, we've got with a big plate of desserts and cookies and donuts. And then we have high blood pressure with, I hate to admit, one of my favorites, a cup of noodles, which is really hot and soda. But anyway, we have a little fun every once in a while. But that's pretty much how you play life match. So they're going to compete against each other. You're going to say go, the first team to make all the matches. Not necessarily be the winning team, but the game will end and you'll kind of check. We'll give you an answer key, and on that answer key you can check everyone's answers. If there are a couple of mistakes or whatever, maybe you can just add up points who has the most correct answers and then determine your winner. Alright, so that's life match. Our next activity is our main activity, and it's pretty fun. Again, an ounce of prevention. And an ounce of prevention is pretty much like a Family Feud style game. Alright, you're going to divide your team into 2 groups, so maybe you want to mix it up from your first group, from your Energizer. Designate an area to host the competition, so just like Family Feud, you need a place up front for 2 students to come stand up. One of you will be the game show host. So like my little game show host here has a bow tie. Feel free to bring your bow ties to feel like a game show host. And then you'll have 2 students stand on opposite ends, and pretty much, one student at a time will come up and compete, and you'll read different questions, and they're all related to the preventable diseases. There are 5 rounds. There are 5 rounds, or is it 6 rounds? There are 5 rounds. No, I was correct. There are 5 rounds. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 questions per round, so keep that in mind. 5 rounds, 4 questions per each round. Students will come up. There'll be 2 bean bags. And you want to make sure they have their hands behind their back as they're facing each other. They're not allowed to blurt out or shout out the answer, so watch that classroom management. And then once they know the answer, they got to grab their beanbag and raise it in the air. And of course, that student will be allowed to go first. All right, so hands behind their back, they got to grab their beanbag and raise it high in the air. And of course, that student or team will get to go first. So you'll need a scorekeeper, so make sure someone's keeping score. And you'll go back and forth. So, for example, I'll give you an example one. This one is about heart disease. So, vomiting or nausea. Heart disease is the category. Vomiting or nausea. What do you think it is, ladies and gentlemen? What do you think is a symptom of heart disease? Is it vomiting or nausea? Well, the answer is nausea. Nausea occurs during the first sign of heart disease, usually as a result of a shortness of breath. And then during this time, most people feel nauseous. So did you know that? Etc. So you'll keep going and you'll keep going and you'll play all your rounds. And you go back and forth and we'll see who our winner is. So again, it's testing your knowledge. Make sure you're doing a good job on the front end when we're going over the diagrams and you guys are reading the descriptors for the different diseases, all right? So again, don't forget about that developmental period, and they're developing those patterns, and we want them to start adopting good, healthy practices and habits so that they can live long, healthy lives and accomplish all their dreams and goals. So again, remember, like I said earlier, get out there, reduce that burden of chronic diseases and save lives. And I want to end with one of my favorite quotes as always: the foundation of all happiness is having good health. It's will. signing out.